Good morning. First of all, I would like to present the excuse for being a bit late. Kept you waiting for a few minutes. I would like to present Dr. Supachai, whom you are aware has been with us since Tuesday. We've had the chance to visit a few ministers, the Minister of Trade and Commerce, Mr. Kadia Sarayurisan. We have visited the Prime Minister. We have visited this morning the Minister Ovin Bulel, and we have also met the President, right, where a lot of subjects has been discussed: trade, cooperation, right, in the region, between Asian and South-South cooperation, right? And of course, the doctor was present also at the dinner at the chamber, where those who were present were able to listen to his remarks. Now, I'd invite Doctor to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I have really been greatly honored by the MCCI in inviting me to come to their annual dinner and give them some advices, some words of experiences that UNCTAD has been doing, helping countries around the world. And I would say I've come here mainly also to learn of the experiences of Mauritius that I can also apply somewhere else, because I would say that Mauritius presents us with a very interesting example of how a small economy with all the attributes that are not all positive but mainly negatives in terms of distance, in terms of population, that could overcome your obstacles in a way that we all can learn from. So our experiences are that for countries like Mauritius, it is very important to be open, and you cannot do something else except being open and being an active member of the international organizations like the UN and the WTO. But you also have to be an active member in a way that Mauritius, together with like-minded economies, will have to make the point quite clear that being small, being vulnerable, more vulnerable than others, you need to be able to be granted certain spatial and differential treatments. And this is something that I have actually paved the way at the WTO, that of course the WTO will go for more and more rules and better rules, but the rules are there to be applied to countries, to all countries. But the rules must be flexible for some that will be less well endowed, poorer, or in a disadvantaged position. And some of the 6 countries, the small island developing states that is a recognized term under the UN, will need to be able to get some kind of this kind of treatment here. The second point that I would like to drive at for Mauritius in terms of your experiences is that Mauritius always tend to have this kind of vision. You make plans, you tend to look at issues that would have to be confronted with, and you try to confront them by making plans to transform economy, to restructure the economy. And this is something that you do well, but I learned by being here that Mauritius has been doing this without having any spatial authority on planning. So you used to have it some time ago, but my advice would be that the kind of planning and coordination and the vision that Mauritius will need to have will be even more demanding. So it would be probably more appropriate to have some setup in a way that there would be more coordination in terms of planning authority within the government, or a coordinating agency or the planning agency that can coordinate the work between the government with the private sectors and among government agencies. I've seen these examples around the world, and particularly in Asia, where, of course, market policies exist parallel with the exercise in planning. So planning doesn't take away from the kind of competitive position that you have to adopt through the application of market mechanism. Planning can help guide countries to determine their industrial policies in a way that industrial policy can be driven by the government, taking care that there needs to have some support from the government at the beginning, support for innovation policy, support for education, trainings of skilled human resource before you can become more competitive. So if you look at the industrial policies that we have endorsed at UNCTAD, at UNIDO in Vienna, you would see that we need the government to help to do this, and you need some coordination. And the last point, the third one that I would like to drive at is that because you are open, you are small, and you need the scales economy, you need to be integrated into a wider regional undertaking. A wider regional undertaking could mean a stronger move towards better regional integration in Africa, which UN, UNCTAD, we are now trying to work with the African Union. We have now on board the program of AU the prime goals of having Pan-African economic integration, and UNCTAD has been tasked to map out the stages that we're doing. And the first stage is for the SADC group, COMESA, and Economic East African Community to harmonize, to work together, to amalgamate. And I know that Mauritius is member of the two of these three organizations, so I hope that Mauritius can help to coordinate these policies and to be serious, because these three groupings, if they are successful, the target is at the year 2017 that you would have a sort of a custom unions and sort of the kind of regulation that this would become an economic community. The other one, which is the policy of the Prime Minister, and which I believe and fully support, is to link Mauritian economy more with other parts of the world. You cannot be predominated in terms of economic, trade, and investment relationship only in dealing with Europe. Not only because Europe may need the next 10 years to adjust themselves. I mean, 10 years is not that long time, but you look at it, but the problem in Europe, some are being seen at the moment, some are still underwater. So in the next 10 years, Europe will have to reinvent itself. And you cannot say that because of your 70% link to Europe will give you some more benefits. You have to diversify your partners, not only in terms of trade, but investment, technology, whatever. And we are seeing that the South, the emerging countries, the open countries, are doing more business together, trading together, investing together, and also joining in research work around the world, which becomes something which is quite appropriate, because you need intermediate kind of technology. You don't need to invent the wheel or to send astronaut to the moon, but you need to have, let's say, application of certain irrigation, for example, irrigation technology to make it a more fertile ground in Africa. And some of this technology exists in India, exists in Malaysia, in Thailand, Indonesia, in Brazil. So the open countries are now working more together, and we would like to support this kind of wider regional integration within this region and among countries at the same level of development. Prime Minister was talking about linking Mauritius more closely to Asia and ASEAN. And I think this is a very good idea, which I fully support, and I would try to do my best to raise the issue, particularly to our ASEAN colleagues, as to how the application of Mauritius to be accepted as an observer at the ASEAN meeting should be considered again. And as you know, just to add this comment, Asia and ASEAN are becoming very dynamic. In fact, Asia Pacific is becoming the new growth pole. That is no contest to this. More than half of the global growth is going to be derived from Asia Pacific, from Asia. And with all the new integration efforts coming in Asia, ASEAN Economic Community, ASEAN +6, I mean ASEAN of 10 countries plus China, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, India. It's going to be one of the largest economic grouping in the world. At the moment, there are competitive regional integration exercises, like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, like Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. So my advice would be that whatever you do, regional integration of countries at similar level of development is the prime goal. You can do the kind of exercise with more advanced economy, but better to do it from the position of strength. You combine your strength in a region and you negotiate with the more advanced economies on the basis of combined strength. So my advice on EPA, for example, Economic Partnership Agreement that EU has been trying to do with ACP countries, I have always believed that as an African groupings, you better to deal on the basis of an economic grouping and not really on an individual basis, because you need to have the kind of strength behind you. And when you do this reciprocal, because EPA is about reciprocity, you need to do reciprocity on the basis of unequal strength, which is a little bit difficult to do it. So you need to combine your strength and negotiate from the position of unity. Thank you very much. You can fill your questions and I will respond.
You mentioned about the deepening of the crisis in Europe, and still Europe is our main partner, main economic partner. So are there still some opportunities that Mauritius can derive from Europe during this period of crisis?
Well, of course, I mean, with your trade structure and your I don't know, communication, transportation, cultural, you may still, of course, need to continue along this line, but you may need to consider different kinds of opportunities. For example, I mean, I would go by experiences again from Asia and from other parts of the world. These are the time in which we are seeing assets in Europe as becoming less expensive than before because of the depreciation in the euro, because of the banking system needing to put up new equities and not being able to do so. They have to shrink their balance sheet, they have to sell their assets. There are companies in Europe that are not really doing well. So this is the time for new relationship with Europe. So for Mauritius, I would say that in order to gain into, let's say, the market of Europe with better kind of hold on the European market and with better technology, you may need to think of joining hands instead of letting the investment coming from Europe to Mauritius. You may need to buy into the niche market in Europe. Asian firms are now buying into several areas in Europe, in steel, in paper, in public utilities, in energy firms, in IT firms, in hospitalities areas, in any type of things. You can look there. And the South-South cooperation doesn't mean to the elimination of North-South coordination. So it's a triangular thing. So, and the triangular thing these days is not based on trade alone. And I would advise that this is a time to be looking at the opportunity to invest, while at the same time trying to create more ties with the rest of the world. I know you have very good ties with China, with India. And through China and through India, you can gain access into Far Eastern, Southeast economies, which are doing so well. I mean, all these countries, the 10 countries in ASEAN are growing so rapidly. 6-7% are becoming just the order of the day easily. And the whole market is being opened up. So you should do that. In Latin America, there are efforts at rejuvenation of the Mercosurs, the Andean Pact. They are building the Banco del Sur, the Bank of the South. So opportunity to trade also with the Latin American economies, particularly in the areas of mineral processing. You also have positioned yourself well as a gateway into Africa and gateway for Africa into Asia. So this gateway, you don't have to engage only in manufacturing. The gateway actually implies that you have to do more on services. Like Singapore. I mean, Singapore thrived because of services and not mainly manufacturing. Services, financial services, consultancies, commercial linkages, there are different areas that you can do. So I would imagine that you are reinventing yourself with anchoring yourself still in Europe will provide different opportunities, but different perspectives.
You are the MCCI, Commerce and Industry, and you know that Mauritius is a very big consumer country, and our trade deficit with foreign lands is enormous. What can be done in order to diminish our trade deficit? We import practically twice as much as what we export. What can be done in order to diminish that trade deficit?
I know of your trade deficit. I have not had the chance to look into the composition of your trade deficit. But I guess on energy, you probably import a lot of energy into Mauritius. You probably import also food supply. Maybe you import a lot of food. It is very hard for small economies to have trade surpluses unless you do both merchandise and services. And this is again another Singapore experience or Taiwanese experience. If you want to have less of the merchandise deficit, you would have to be part of the global chain of production, the international production network, or what they call global value chain at the moment. Now, Taiwanese has linked themselves on the global value chain right from the beginning. And they started with the semiconductor, from the beginning. They start to be major producers of parts of the IT equipments, and so much so that they have graduated themselves from being parts producers on the basis of management contract. They begin to market themselves, to climb up from being mainly producers to be marketing, and then to be doing research. So I would say that it's also risky. I mean, these are the things that I'm going to ask UNCTAD to advise Mauritian government that we have done a lot of research work on these linkages in the international production chain. Mauritius being small, you must link up. But you must link up in a way that you are not being exploited, but you can exploit the chain. You can be part of the chain and you can graduate on the chain. You can be more than just somebody who takes the order from the chain, but you can also exert yourself. This is one thing that you can do to help in trying to balance, because being part of the chain, you import things, you process, you export things, you're not in deficit. So this is one area which I would advise. Another area would be in the area of services industry. Being gateway, you can do more on services, and you can have, let's say, linkages in terms of outsourcing, business operation outsourcing. Mauritians population speaking so many different languages. You can really position yourself like India, like the Philippines, who can speak different languages to link up with business operation, backroom operators. You can do that. This is the second areas of services, and also transportation in terms of being like Singapore, the entrepôt, the port of transshipment. I was told by some Chinese leaders that they are looking at some island, and Mauritius was mentioned. Days that I was not really much informed.
We're not that much fun.
You know.
Now we're on your radar screen.
Yeah. No, but Chinese, I think they're thinking of using Mauritius to do this kind of, I don't know what they would call, maybe export, not so zone as they did in Northern Africa with Alexandria being their export processing zone, warehouse. So, but they can use Mauritius as a zone where they can distribute their goods into Africa with your infrastructural amenities. And thirdly, in terms of energy, we need to be better. We need to be more efficient in the way we use our energy. And I was asking around because I don't know how much you do in terms of renewable energy. The last few days, I mean, my wife and I, we experienced a lot of windy areas. You can easily do wind farm. I don't know, the wind farms. And wind farm technology these days are not in California anymore. They are in somewhere in Xinjiang, in China. I've been to the largest wind farms in the world, somewhere in Xinjiang. And the turbine and everything, equipments produced mainly in Asia now, in China and the rest of Asia. So you can also buy into this technology or having production technology. You can use this because wind turbines very cheap, very clean, and you can do it here. I'm sure because you have so much winds and storm and everything. You position your turbine in a way, and you concentrate it in certain areas. You see, because what they did in Asia was that they assign some villages or towns, and they say, okay, you have a target. You do this wind turbine, and you reduce your reliance on fossil fuels by having these wind turbines for your community, and it's a whole windmills, the whole area to have this. So you target certain township here in Mauritius, somewhere close by the coastal area to do this. So I would recommend this because we need to be more efficient in the way we use fossil fuel, and they're not becoming more expensive, but they're bound to become more expensive because what they call the peak oil, they keep postponing it. Why? Because US keep discovering the shale oil, and we discover shale oil in somewhere else in Canada, in Europe, in China. There is going to be end to it, you know. This is finite. This is finite. So one day, oil staying now around 90 to 110 will not be there forever. One day there will be peak oil, and it will become $200 for soon. So you need to be able to enhance, to expand the part of non-fossil fuel, renewable energy, I would say. You're in a position to do that also.
You talk of India and China. What, according to you, is the future of BRICS?
Yes. Well, we work a lot with BRICS. BRICS actually is an investment banker. Acronym? Somebody from Goldman Sachs thought of the BRICS because they want to float some of the papers, and they use the BRICS to float their papers to entice more investment into the papers. They floated for BRICS. BRICS are not like EU. BRICS are not like ASEAN. BRICS are not like Mercosur. BRICS even do not exist. I mean, in contiguous terms, they are all everywhere. Russia there, South Africa here. They are mainly grouped together because of the fast pace of growth, and because of their maybe the size of the domestic market. Russia, India, maybe South Africa. Apart from that, I still do not see. So I'm now trying to sit down with them and try to determine what should be, the joint common program in BRICS. I still do not see. So the only thing now they agreed on, and without our advice, is to do something like the BRICS Bank, which I couldn't say to the press that I question, but I would say, what would be the word that I would say? I would think that they need more analytical work to be able to look at that. I don't want the BRIC Bank to be competing with the World Bank, with the Asian Development Bank, with the African Development Bank. You see, there are so many banks around the world these days. Too many banks. And all the time when we are consulting on creating new banks, what we say is that, look, you go and try to improve on the existing banks. The bank in Latin America, the Inter-American Bank, they want to create Banco del Sur. I mean, they said Inter-American Bank for Latin America, but located in Washington, D.C. Is it Inter-American Bank? So they have a point, but if they want to do that, they have a bank within Andean Pact, very good bank. With Peru, Colombia, Ecuador, they have a very good bank there. Why don't you expand on that bank and make that bank work better? For Africa, African Development Bank is a good bank. You have Exim Bank for Africa. You work on that. In Asia, you have Asian Development Bank, very good bank. Why should BRIC have another bank? Let me say, I'm not objecting to the BRIC Bank because we are working with them, but I would pose the question as to what kind of work the bank would be doing, what kind of operation, what are their competitive positions of a BRIC Bank? Because you have huge bank in Russia, you have huge bank in India. I would say the banks in India may need some improvement because sometimes there's too much state-owned banks. You need more privatized bank in India. You have banks in South Africa. You may need to have better banks supervision in South Africa. You have banks in Brazil. You may need also to do better on private banks in Brazil. So you have banks everywhere, and what should a BRIC Bank do? The only thing that I could conceive of is to try to have a common agenda, which I said from the beginning. BRICS is a concoction of an investment bank, and in itself doesn't have an agenda. We would love to have BRICS as a common agenda area, and maybe in the area of South-South cooperation in BRICS, to be able to do joint investment. I would say if BRICS would do, say, joint investment in renewable production of renewable energy, for example, I would love to see BRICS like that. I would love to see BRICS to do more in terms of creative economy, to do more in terms of knowledge economy, information system, to have joint investment, to do research work more in the areas of medicine, things like that. Things that would have the kind of the attributes of the software from India, the hardware from China, the commodities from Russia, the agricultural things from Brazil, and the strengths of South Africa as a major driver in Africa. So there should be the strength that they can combine to do the things. And to do a bank, again, keep coming back, what is a BRIC bank that can do that a big bank in India or a big bank in Russia cannot do? I mean, this is my question.
You once said that many previously held tenets of development economics, including the wisdom of financial deregulation and liberalization, are now being questioned and withdrawn.
Right.
Do you have any question, any comment on this issue? Then I would also like to know, in Peru, which will host the next UNCTAD conference in 2016, what will be the main issues on the agenda?
Okay.
And how important is the integration of inequality of development issues in post-2050 Millennium Development Goal objectives? And maybe you can tell me what will UNCTAD do to celebrate its next 50 years? It's 50 years next year. And I also want to know, Mauritius has been accused of being a fiscal paradise. Do you think our jurisdiction is properly regulated? What can we do to improve our capacity to attract more FDI in Mauritius? And in an age of economic opulence, how do you think flows of trade can alleviate wide economic disparities among nations?
It's a multiple choice.
Yeah. I would have to
pick and choose which one you want.
This is my trade and development course lecture. So,
I can give you.
Oh no! I would try to summarize what you are saying. I would try to summarize what you are saying. In fact, the Peru UNCTAD 14 conference, we have quadrennial conference, so it will be our 14th conference in Lima in 2016. Yeah, you're right, 2016. It's going to be a key. It's going to be a key conference. Why? Because it will come just 1 year after 2015 post-MDGs. You see, the post-MDGs, what we would call the next millennium for sustainable development goals. It will be from MDG, we would transform it into an SDG exercise. So at Lima meeting, we would be trying to send out signals on what we believe in what should an SDG be. I'll give you some brief thinking on the new SDG. The MDGs have been partially successful in some countries, but MDGs goals are 8 goals, MDGs. Out of the 8 goals in MDG, only 1 goal is an economic goal. The 7 goals are purely social goals. Maternal health, enrollment, clean water, HIV/AIDS, they're all good goals. We don't agree so much with those kind of setting of goals. We disagree mainly because those goals we said were set up in the new beginning of the millennium, driven mainly by the neoliberal thinking. Neoliberal thinking, as we perceive, is that you, the UN, and you, the countries, you do the social thing. You leave the economic things to the market. You get the social things right, the market will get your economic things right, which is not what we believe at UNCTAD. We think it's just the other way around. I mean, we don't believe that the market can send out the right signals all the time. And we use the financial market, the first question that you posed, as the example. We could not have warned the exact timing of the explosion, of the financial explosion with the subprime credits. But we've been saying this every year in all our reports about the dichotomy between financial sectors and the real sector. We've been saying all the time that the financial expansion at the cost of the rest of the economy cannot be sustained. And Cyprus is such a glaring example. You look only at Cyprus. We haven't singled out Cyprus, but if you look at our past analysis, Cyprus has a financial sector that is 8 times the size of Cyprus. It cannot be maintained. What do you do with the 7? One time can be invest in Cyprus. The 7 times you invest in something else, and so they invest in Greek bonds. And you can see the demise because the Greek bond has been a junk bond without the European Central Bank intervention. So at the moment, Cyprus is bankrupt. It's not only taking 60% of the deposits from the one above 100,000 euros. It will wipe out everything because it cannot pay for it. Now, American financial system accounts for something like 8 to 10% of the value add in United States, meaning contribution to the real sector. It accounts for 50% of the profits in the whole U.S. economy. Can you see it maintained? When you have a shake hand between the outgoing CEO of a big Wall Street firm that would pay him $150 million for his service that has resulted in all the demise of all this bank, they all get high pay salaries, uncontrolled, and the shareholders. So in Switzerland, where I live, UBS, Union Bank of Switzerland, where we all have our accounts from the UN, UBS is about 5 times the size of Switzerland. And one day UBS went belly up a few years ago, and UBS could only stay on now because of the intervention by the government. So you can see that financial system, when it goes on its way to print their own money, you would have thought that government print money. No. Banks print their own money by issuing their papers. And they call their papers different things to deceive you. And I was told by a banker's friend on Wall Street that sometimes they sell their papers with their customer not asking even one question, because they cannot dare to be embarrassed. Because, I'm a banker and you're an accountant, and you cannot say, oh, what is a CDO? What does it represent? What is the content of the CDO? Which kind of mortgages you put in the CDO or the swap? AEC, the American EIC Insurance Corporation, did so well when they did only insurance. Only when they set up a new division on derivatives, on swap. The whole division on swap killed off all the benefits from the side of investment. And that's why the demise of AIC, and now it's become a US-owned, government-owned company. So we have been saying all this all along, that you cannot allow financial system to take over from the real sector in terms of an economy. Not in the United States, not anywhere in the world. Nobody believes us. And they thought in Asia, the Asians were not so clever because they allowed the financial system to get to be overblown, and they paid for it. It will not happen in advanced economy because we have a better system. There is no better system with the kind of imbalances between the financial development and real sector development. The speculation that has, since times of Lord Keynes, it became a casino. It was Keynes' term. It's becoming a casino within the system itself. So this is a casino finance system. So be it. So at Peru, we'll be looking at how we can devise globalization in a way that what we call at UNCTAD is a new path for development-led globalization. Globalization should not be led by finance. Globalization should be led by development policies. By saying development policies, I mean what you just said on inequality. Inclusive development. Inclusive development means prevalence of real investment, capacity building, government role, enabling role of the government, gender equality, employment creation, investment in agriculture development. These are what I call development-led globalization. Social protection, and not only in terms of how many banks you set up, what kind of interest rates you do. Monetary policies for us, for investment-led globalization, should be driven both by inflation targeting and growth targeting. You cannot afford the luxury of making use of the huge potential of the central bank to only keep your inflation under, let's say, 1 or 2 percentage points. Sometimes you can allow inflation to be 3 or 4 points because you need more jobs creation. You target jobs first. And this is what all about that we are saying these days, that inclusive development, development-led globalization. 2016 meeting of UNCTAD will be driven by this kind of exercise, and we are together with the UN institutions in New York, we are now setting up what you call the post-2015 goal for the SDG, and mainly for us, we call it development-led globalization and dealing inequities that you were talking about. Now about Mauritius and FDI and things like that, we do a lot of work in FDIs, but we don't believe in FDIs that are driven by the TNCs at all, that the TNC tell you what to do. They move all the dirty things into your own country, and the FDI wouldn't count. So FDI for us, again, we talked about the soft rules, soft laws of FDI, we call it sustainable investment. Sustainable investment means that you are driven by FDI only when you deem it fit to have FDI. Otherwise, my friend here, Raju, has been talking about domestic investment. You do investment on both sides, domestic and international, but driven by your development strategy. Again, development-led globalization. You don't go to ask some TNCs, MNCs to invest in your country without knowing what you want. You must say, okay, I don't know what Mauritius is now aiming at, say, medical equipment, because you would link it to the universal healthcare here, and you would link it to the need of the African continent. So you would need medical equipment. Then you begin to talk about what technology you would like to induce, what kind of pharmaceutical industry you would like to set up here, and you can then work with the Indian or the Chinese or the Thais to set this up. But you must know first that you can do this. But you should not be thinking in terms of setting up a steel industry in Mauritius, for example. You don't do heavy industry in a small economy. You don't do automobile in an economy with 1.2 million people. So you must target some areas in which you know yourself that this is our niche. And the last point on trade, how can trade bear on development? Trade per se is only an instrument that if not dressed in the right manner, will not help the economies, will help only traders and commercial entities. The big ones will enjoy the benefits. So trade policies must be driven, and UNCTAD has been doing trade policies exercise with African economies, and in the last few days of the discussion with the leadership in Mauritius, we're willing to work with Mauritius to look into some analytical framework as to how trade can be mainstream into your development aspiration. Trade is to be mainstream. Trade is not going to drive. It has to be part of the exercise.
I think, Dr. Supachai is a guest speaker for the MCI dinner, but we have, encroached upon his timetable to say, since this morning he's been up and he's going to fly out. But I must say that, for your own benefit, for the last couple of days, it was just like a PhD course for me and maybe for Ganesh. But, it's like there's so much flow. The Prime Minister, even though he finished at 4 o'clock in the morning, that day we spent 1 hour with him, and he was asking all those questions, And with the President was even more dynamic because he had met Dr. Supachai. He was at the Minister of Planning, so he knew all the issues. And for us in Mauritius, I think we need to get the economic thing back on track. We need to focus on what is important for our country, what is going to create jobs, and let other things aside. And at the MCCI, we believe in commerce, we believe in trade, but also we believe in openness and dialogue. So what Dr. Supachai said in terms of the importance of coordination and planning, I think is key. And I think we are going to work on that. In our next initiative, we are going to see something coming out of all those discussions. So this is not palette remote, but we are working on a new initiative to actually kickstart that process. And as I said at the dinner, we need to start imagining the future. We are at the crossroad. We cannot use the same remedies as before, and we expect we'll be lucky. As Professor Dr. Supachai said, he said, Japan has been in something like that for 20 years. So if you continue like that, we're happy with, whether it's 3.2. The debate is not that. The debate is what do we do to get to 6? How do we get people out of employment? And we also talk about the quality of FDI. The level of FDI, I was at the BOI before, has stayed the same. It's real estate, 5 billion. The up and down has been capitalization of banks. That's all. So is that a trend that is sustainable? So we've got our own thinking to do, as Dr. Supachai said. We need to know what we want to do. And we've had this kind of very frank dialogue, with the Prime Minister, the President, or the Minister. So we are very privileged. We'd like to thank you for coming, the good collaboration that we have. I think it's a triangular cooperation, the public, private, and the press.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Dr. Supachai will the present for you.
Oh.
Yes.
This one you can carry.
Yes.
This is a book on the history of the chambers. The chambers exist since 1850, as you know.
Yes.
Right? And it gives you a very good insight of what the chamber has done since its beginning.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure.